The morning sun streamed through the windows of Maya Wilson's apartment as she checked her suitcase one last time. Monday again. Time for her weekly flight from Chicago to New York. After 3 years as a senior executive at Skyway Airlines, the routine was second nature to her. Yet no matter how many times she went through it, airports always brought a small knot of tension to her stomach. Maya glanced at her reflection in the hallway mirror. Her charcoal gray suit was perfectly pressed, not a wrinkle in sight. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, professional and practical. At 38, she had mastered the art of dressing for success, of looking the part of an airline executive. She straightened her collar and nodded to herself. Keys, wallet, phone, laptop, ID. She whispered to herself, patting each pocket and section of her bag. A habit she'd developed long ago. Her airline badge was tucked into her wallet, though. She rarely needed to use it. Most days, she preferred to travel like any other passenger. Maya believed in experiencing her company's service the same way customers did. How else could she make it better? The Uber ride to O'Hare International Airport was quiet. Maya used the time to review her notes for the meeting she would lead in New York tomorrow morning. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, tried to make small talk. "Big meeting?" he asked, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. Maya looked up from her tablet and smiled. "Always is," she said. "But that's okay. I like being busy." "You fly a lot?" he asked, navigating through the morning traffic. "Every week," Maya replied. "I could probably find my gate with my eyes closed by now." The driver laughed. "I've been driving to this airport for 10 years and I still get turned around sometimes. Place is like a small city." Maya nodded, looking out at the skyline as they approached the airport. The familiar sight of planes taking off and landing in the distance brought mixed feelings. Pride in being part of an industry that connected people across the world, and the quiet dread of what often awaited her at security. The Uber pulled up to the departure area. Maya thanked the driver, grabbed her carry-on and headed inside. The Monday morning rush was in full swing. Business travelers with coffee cups in hand, families wrangling children and luggage, airline staff walking briskly to their posts. Maya checked the time, 7:15 a.m. Her flight wasn't until 9:30, but she always came early. Experience had taught her to allow extra time. Maya had TSA pre-check, of course, one of the perks of frequent flying. But even that streamlined process wasn't always smooth for her. She took a deep breath as she approached the security area, mentally preparing herself. She'd been through this hundreds of times. Most days went fine. But there were always those other days. She joined the pre-check line, shorter than the regular security line, but still moving slowly this morning. In front of her, a white businessman in his 50s chatted on his phone, barely pausing his conversation as he handed his ID to the agent and was waved through with barely a glance. Behind her, 2 young white women in business casual attire laughed about their weekend. Maya reached the front of the line and presented her driver's license and boarding pass to the TSA agent, a balding man with a stern expression. His name, tag read Officer Dawson. He looked at her ID, then at her, then back at the ID again. "Good morning," Maya said pleasantly. Officer Dawson didn't return the greeting. He studied her license longer than he had for the previous travelers, turning it over, holding it up to the light. "This is you?" he asked, his tone suggesting doubt. Maya kept her smile in place, though it felt a bit stiffer now. "Yes, that's me." "Purpose of your travel today?" Officer Dawson asked, a question he hadn't posed to anyone else in line that Maya had observed. "Business," Maya replied simply. She didn't know him her life story or her position at the airline. She was just another traveler trying to get through security. Officer Dawson looked at her again, eyes narrowing slightly. Then, without another word, he marked something on her boarding pass and handed back her documents. As Maya walked toward the conveyor belt to place her items in bins, she noticed Officer Dawson speak into his radio. She tried to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach as she removed her laptop from her bag and placed it in a bin. She slipped off her shoes and put them in another bin, along with her blazer and the small bag of toiletries she always kept in her carry-on. She'd done this dance so many times before. The routine was familiar, but the tension never quite went away. As she waited for her turn to walk through the scanner, Maya watched as other travelers breezed through with minimal interaction. She took another deep breath. When it was her turn, Maya walked through the body scanner, arms raised as required. She stood on the other side, waiting for the usual signal to move on. Instead, a female TSA agent approached her. "Ma'am, you've been selected for additional screening," the woman said. Her tone wasn't unkind, but Maya knew what this meant. From the corner of her eye, Maya could see Officer Dawson watching. She nodded politely to the female agent. "Of course." As the agent led her to a screening area, Maya glanced back at the pre-check line. The white businessman who had been in front of her was already putting his shoes back on, his belongings gathered. The two young women behind her were coming through the scanner now, laughing again, collecting their things without interruption. "Arms out, please," the female agent said. Maya complied, standing still as the agent waved a handheld detector over her body. She tried to keep her face neutral, aware of the other travelers watching. This was the part she hated most. Being made into a spectacle, treated differently while others looked on. The additional screening seemed to take forever, though in reality, it was probably only a few minutes. The female agent was professional enough, but Maya couldn't help feeling the burn of embarrassment as she stood there, being patted down in her stocking feet. "Is there a problem?" Maya finally asked, her voice quiet but firm. "Just routine, ma'am," the female agent replied, not meeting her eyes. Maya wanted to point out that it didn't seem routine for anyone else, but she kept that thought to herself. Years of experience had taught her that challenging the process only made things worse. When the pat-down was finally complete, Maya was allowed to gather her belongings. She slipped her shoes back on and began to repack her bag. As she did, she noticed Officer Dawson approaching her again. "We need to check your bag," he said, not a request but a statement. Maya felt her jaw tighten, but she nodded. "Go ahead." "Officer." Dawson took her carry-on and began to go through it thoroughly, removing items and examining them one by one. Maya's neatly packed clothes were unfolded, her toiletry bag opened and inspected, her notebook flipped through. Even her packet of tissues was opened. Around her, other travelers continued to move through security with ease. Maya stood perfectly still, watching her belongings being handled roughly. She checked her watch. What should have been a quick process had now taken nearly 20 minutes. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" Maya asked, keeping her tone even despite her growing frustration. Officer Dawson looked up at her, his expression hard. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Security procedures." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak further. She had a meeting to prepare, 4 calls to make before her flight. This delay was eating into her carefully planned morning. Finally, apparently satisfied that Maya's lipstick and phone charger weren't security threats, Officer Dawson began to haphazardly return items to her bag. "I can do that," Maya said, reaching for her belongings. For a moment, Officer Dawson seemed reluctant to hand over the bag, but then he pushed it toward her. "Make sure you arrive earlier next time," he said, though Maya had arrived with plenty of time to spare. Maya repacked her bag quickly and efficiently, restoring order to her belongings. As she zipped up her carry-on, she could feel Officer Dawson still watching her. She straightened her shoulders, picked up her bag, and walked away from the security checkpoint with her head held high. Only when she was out of sight did Maya let her shoulders drop slightly. She checked her watch again and headed toward her gate. There was still time to get a coffee and make those calls before boarding. She wouldn't let this incident derail her day. As she walked through the terminal, Maya couldn't help but wonder how many other travelers had similar experiences. How many others felt singled out, made to feel like outsiders in spaces where everyone should be treated equally. The thought both saddened and strengthened her resolve. Maya found a quiet corner near her gate, set down her bag, and pulled out her phone. She had work to do, a team to lead, goals to meet. This morning's experience was just another reminder of why her position mattered, why her voice in the company mattered. One day, perhaps, her airline badge wouldn't need to be a shield. But, until then, she would continue to rise above, to excel despite the obstacles placed in her path. She looked out the large windows at the planes taking off and landing, each one carrying hundreds of people to their destinations, to business meetings and family reunions, to new adventures and familiar homes. Maya took a deep breath and smiled to herself. Despite everything, she still loved being part of this world, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. Maya sat at the gate area, sipping her coffee and trying to focus on her emails. The interaction at security had left a bitter taste in her mouth, but she was determined not to let it ruin her day. After 15 years in the airline industry, she had learned to brush off these encounters. Still, each one stung in its own way. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant in New York. Conference room booked for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Team is ready for your presentation. Maya smiled. Her team was the bright spot in her hectic schedule, a group of dedicated professionals who shared her vision for improving customer experience at Skyway Airlines. As she typed a quick reply, Maya noticed a man sitting across from her, glancing her way. He had been at the security checkpoint earlier, she realized, one of the witnesses to her special treatment. He quickly looked away when their eyes met. Maya was used to this too, the awkward glances, the silent acknowledgement from bystanders who saw what happened but said nothing. She checked the time. Still 45 minutes until boarding. Plenty of time to grab something to eat. Maya gathered her things and headed toward one of the terminal restaurants. As she walked, she spotted Officer Dawson from TSA moving through the terminal with another agent. Maya felt her shoulders tense automatically, but she kept walking, pretending not to notice him. Too late. Officer Dawson had spotted her too. He said something to his colleague, and they changed direction, heading straight toward Maya. She considered ducking into a shop, avoiding another interaction, but decided against it. She had done nothing wrong. She had no reason to hide. Excuse. Me, ma'am, Officer Dawson called out as he approached. I need to speak with you. Maya stopped, clutching her bag a little tighter. Yes? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Your boarding pass, please, he said, holding out his hand. May I ask why? Maya asked. I've already cleared security. Just routine, Officer Dawson replied, the same answer she'd heard earlier. We need to verify something. Maya took a slow breath. Around them, other travelers were beginning to stare. This was exactly the kind of scene she wanted to avoid, being singled out, made into a spectacle. But she also knew her rights. She'd done nothing to warrant this continued scrutiny. I'm heading to get breakfast before my flight, she said calmly. If there's an issue with my boarding pass, you can speak with the gate agent. Officer Dawson's face hardened. Ma'am, this is a security matter. I need to see your boarding pass now. The second agent, a younger man with an uncomfortable expression, stood slightly behind Dawson, saying nothing. Maya noticed his name tag read Officer Chen. I've already been through an extensive security check, Maya said, still keeping her voice low and controlled. More extensive than anyone else in line from what I observed. My boarding pass was verified then. Unless you can tell me specifically what the issue is, I'm going to continue to my gate. A small crowd had gathered, now pretending not to watch while obviously taking in every word. Maya felt her heart racing despite her outward calm. Years of dealing with situations like this had taught her to control her reactions, but inside, she was a mix of anger and anxiety. Are you refusing to comply with a security request? Officer Dawson asked, his voice rising slightly. I'm asking for clarification, Maya replied. As is my right. Officer Chen finally spoke up, his voice quieter than Dawson's. Sir, maybe we should... I know how to do my job. Dawson cut him off. He turned back to Maya. Ma'am, if you don't comply, I'll have to escort you back to the security checkpoint. Maya looked around at the watching faces, the curious eyes, the uncomfortable expressions. This was humiliating, and that was likely the point. She had seen this tactic before. Create a scene, make the person feel embarrassed enough to comply, without question. But compliance without question wasn't in Maya's nature, especially when she knew she was being treated unfairly. I'll show you my boarding pass, she said finally, reaching into her bag. But I'd like to know what specifically you're looking for, and why I'm being singled out after already clearing security. She handed over her boarding pass, watching as Officer Dawson examined it closely. There was nothing to find. It was a standard first-class ticket, properly issued, already scanned at security. "Where did you get this ticket?" he asked, looking at her with suspicion. The question caught Maya off guard. "What do you mean? I booked it through my company like I do every week." "And what company is that?" Dawson pressed. Maya hesitated. She rarely led with her position, preferring to be treated like any other passenger. But in this moment she was tempted to mention that she worked for the very airline whose ticket she held. Before she could decide, Officer Chen spoke again. "Sir, the boarding pass looks legitimate. I don't see any issues." Dawson ignored him, still staring at Maya. "You fly this route often?" "Every week," Maya replied. "For the past 3 years." "Always in first class?" His tone suggested he found this suspicious. Maya felt her patience wearing thin. "Yes, always in first class." "Is that a problem?" "It just seems unusual," Dawson said, still holding her boarding pass. "A lot of travel, expensive tickets." The implication was clear, and it made Maya's blood boil, but she kept her expression neutral. "Is there a specific security concern with my boarding pass? If not, I'd like it back, please." A voice spoke up from behind her. "Is there a problem here?" Maya turned to see an older white woman in a business suit pulling a small carry-on. The woman looked between Maya and the TSA officers with a frown. "No problem, ma'am," Officer Dawson said quickly, his tone suddenly more professional. "Just a routine check." "Doesn't look routine to me," the woman said. "I've been flying through this airport for 20 years, and I've never been stopped after clearing security to have my boarding pass re-examined." Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward this stranger, but also worry. She didn't want to create a bigger scene, didn't want this to escalate further. "It's fine," Maya said to the woman. "Thank you, though." The woman looked unconvinced, but nodded, and stepped back, though she didn't walk away completely. Her presence seemed to change the dynamic. Officer Dawson handed the boarding pass back to Maya with obvious reluctance. "All seems to be in order," he said stiffly. "Have a good flight." He turned to leave, but Maya wasn't finished. "Officer Dawson," she said, causing him to pause. "I'd like your badge number, please." His back stiffened. "For what purpose?" "For my records," Maya said simply. "Since this interaction was so unusual, I'd like to document it properly." Officer Dawson turned back, his expression dark. "Are you threatening to file a complaint? Because I can assure you I've done nothing wrong. I'm just doing my job, keeping this airport safe." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Your badge number, please." Officer Chen looked increasingly uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. The small crowd of onlookers had grown slightly, people slowing their pace to watch the confrontation. After a tense moment, Dawson recited his badge number in a clipped tone. Maya committed it to memory, then nodded. "Thank you, have a good day." She turned and walked away, feeling Dawson's eyes boring into her back. The older woman who had spoken up fell into step beside her. "That was outrageous," the woman said quietly. "Are you okay?" Maya nodded. "Yes, thank you for speaking up. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," the woman replied. "I've seen this happen too many times. Never to me, of course." She gestured to her own pale skin. "But I've watched it happen to others. Usually I mind my own business, walk on by, not proud of that." She shook her head. "Couldn't do it today." Maya smiled at the woman. "Well, I appreciate it. I'm Maya, by the way." "Linda," the woman replied. "Heading to Boston. You?" "New York," Maya said. "Weekly trip for work." They walked together toward the restaurants, talking about their jobs, their frequent travels. It was a welcome distraction from the confrontation with Officer Dawson. By the time they reached the restaurant area, Maya's heart rate had returned to normal. "Well, this is me," Linda said, gesturing to a cafe. "Good luck with everything, Maya. And if you do file that complaint, follow through. Nothing changes if we don't speak up." Maya nodded. "I will. Thank you again, Linda." After Linda walked away, Maya stood for a moment, considering her options. She could get breakfast as planned, but her appetite had disappeared. She could head back to her gate early, but the thought of sitting there, potentially running into Officer Dawson again, was unappealing. Instead, she found a quiet corner of the terminal and pulled out her phone. She had contemplated filing complaints before after similar incidents at other airports, but she had always talked herself out of it. What was the point? Would anything really change? Besides, she was busy, had more important things to focus on, but today felt different. Maybe it was Linda's encouragement, or maybe she had simply reached her limit. Maya opened her notes app and began typing, documenting the entire experience while it was fresh in her mind. The initial security screening, the random selection, the secondary boarding pass check. Every detail, every word she could remember as she typed. Maya noticed a group of flight attendants walking through the terminal in Skyway Airlines uniforms. Her colleagues, though they didn't know her. Maya watched them, proud of the company she had helped build, the improvements she had championed in employee training and customer service. But there was still so much work to do. Not just at Skyway, but in the entire industry, the entire travel experience. Her phone buzzed with a text from her team in New York. "Just confirming dinner tonight with the marketing department at 7 p.m. Maya replied quickly, then returned to her notes. By the time she finished documenting the incident, 30 minutes had passed, and it was nearly time to board her flight. She saved the notes, promising herself she would follow through this time, would file the formal complaint when she reached New York. As she walked back toward her gate, Maya spotted Officer Dawson again. He was at another gate, speaking to a young black man whose backpack was open on the floor, contents spilling out. The young man looked confused and embarrassed as other passengers boarded around him. Maya slowed her pace, watching the scene unfold. The same pattern, the same targeting, the same public humiliation. She felt a surge of anger, but also determination. This wasn't just about her experience anymore. It was about a system that needed to change. When she reached her gate, boarding had already begun. The gate agent smiled at her. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson. We're ready for you in first class whenever you're ready." Maya nodded her thanks and stepped into the boarding line. As she waited, she thought about the day ahead, the meetings in New York, the decisions to be made. But now, there was something else on her agenda too, something that had been building for years, through countless security checks at countless airports, something that couldn't wait any longer. The line moved forward and Maya approached the gate agent, boarding pass in hand. As the agent scanned it, she smiled again. "Have a wonderful flight, Ms. Wilson." Maya thanked her and walked down the jetway toward the plane that would take her to New York. With each step, her resolve strengthened. This time would be different. This time she wouldn't let it go. Not for herself, but for every traveler who had ever stood where she stood, feeling singled out, feeling less than, feeling wrong. As she settled into her first-class seat, Maya looked out the window at the busy tarmac. Planes taking off and landing, carrying thousands of people to their destinations. All those people deserving equal treatment, equal respect, equal dignity. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The fight ahead would be challenging, but necessary. And Maya Wilson was no stranger to challenges. Maya's flight landed at JFK right on schedule. As the plane taxied to the gate, she gathered her things, mentally shifting gears from the morning's confrontation to her upcoming meetings. The New York team was waiting for her input on the new customer service training program, a project she had championed for months. It was important work, work that mattered. Her phone buzzed with messages as soon as she turned off airplane mode. 3 emails from her assistant, a text from her brother asking about weekend plans, and a notification from the Airline app about her return flight tomorrow evening. Maya responded to her assistant first, confirming she was on the ground and would be at the office within the hour. As passengers began to stand and retrieve their bags from the overhead compartments, Maya remained seated, taking advantage of her first-class position to avoid the rush. Her mind drifted back to Officer Dawson and the incident at O'Hare. The memory still made her stomach tighten with anger and frustration. She had spent the flight making notes about the encounter, determined to file a formal complaint this time. "Ms. Wilson?" The flight attendant's voice pulled Maya from her thoughts. "Your car is waiting at the curb when you're ready." Maya smiled. "Thank you, Diane." One of the perks of her position was car service in New York, though she rarely used it in Chicago, preferring to travel like any other passenger. Today, however, she was grateful for the convenience. The sooner she got to the office, the sooner she could put the morning's unpleasantness behind her. As Maya walked through JFK, she noticed how different this experience was from her departure at O'Hare. Here, where she was known, where her face was familiar to many of the staff, she moved through the airport with ease. No one questioned her presence. No one doubted she belonged. Outside, her driver was waiting as promised. He greeted her with a warm smile, took her bag, and opened the car door. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson. Straight to the office today?" "Yes, please, Joe," Maya replied, settling into the back seat. "How's your daughter doing at college?" Joe beamed at the question. "Loving it, Ms. Wilson. That scholarship program your company set up for employees' kids changed her life, changed our whole family's future." Maya smiled, genuinely pleased. The scholarship program had been another of her initiatives, fought for in budget meetings and executive sessions. Moments like this made all those battles worthwhile. The drive into Manhattan was smooth, traffic lighter than usual. Maya used the time to check more emails and review her notes for the day's meetings. By the time they pulled up to the Skyway, Airline's headquarters, she felt centered again, focused on the work ahead rather than the confrontation behind. "Have a good day, Ms. Wilson," Joe said as he opened her door and handed her the carry-on. "You too, Joe. Give my best to your family." The security guard in the lobby greeted her by name as she entered the building. "Morning, Ms. Wilson. The team is waiting for you upstairs." Maya nodded her thanks and headed for the elevator. As she rode up to the executive floor, she straightened her jacket and took a deep breath. 24 hours in New York, then back to Chicago tomorrow evening. A normal business trip, despite its unusual start. Her assistant David was waiting when the elevator doors opened. "Coffee's on your desk, team's in the conference room, and the CEO wants 5 minutes when you have a chance," he said, falling into step beside her as they walked toward her office. "Thanks, David. Let's get the team started, then I'll catch up with Thomas before lunch," Maya replied. Her New York office was smaller than her main office in Chicago, but it had the same framed photos on the desk. Her parents, her brother and his family, her college graduation. A reminder of the people who had supported her journey to this position, who had celebrated each step up the corporate ladder. Maya dropped her bag, grabbed the coffee David had waiting, and headed to the conference room. 8 members of her team were seated around the table, laptops open, conversation flowing. They quieted as she entered, all eyes turning to her. "Good morning, everyone," Maya said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Let's get started." For the next 2 hours, Maya led the meeting with practiced ease, guiding discussions on customer feedback metrics, staff training procedures, and implementation timelines. This was where she thrived, solving problems, improving systems, making travel better for both passengers and employees. The morning's incident at security seemed distant now, almost happening to someone else, until her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you made your flight okay. This is Linda from O'Hare. Got your number from a gate agent who saw us talking. Wanted to make sure you're filing that complaint. What happened wasn't right." Maya stared at the message, the security checkpoint suddenly vivid in her mind again. Officer Dawson's suspicious glare, the public humiliation, the watching eyes of other travelers. She set her phone down, trying to refocus on the meeting, but the text had reopened something raw. "Maya, what do you think?" One of her team members was looking at her expectantly. "I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?" Maya asked, forcing herself back to the present. The meeting continued, but now Maya found her mind splitting between work and the incident at O'Hare. What would filing a complaint actually accomplish? Would anyone even read it? Officer Dawson would probably deny everything, claim he was just doing his job, following protocol. It would be her word against his. When the meeting finally broke for lunch, Maya returned to her office and closed the door. She pulled up the notes she'd made on the flight, reading through her detailed account of the morning. Seeing it written out, the pattern of behavior, the clear targeting, strengthened her resolve. She needed to file that complaint, not just for herself, but for every traveler who didn't have the platform she had, who couldn't make their voice heard. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Maya? Thomas has a few minutes now if you're free," David said, poking his head in. Maya nodded, closing her laptop. "I'll head up now." The CEO's office took up half of the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Manhattan. Thomas Reynolds, a man in his early 60s with silver hair and a runner's lean build, greeted her warmly. "Maya, good to see you. How was the flight?" For a moment, Maya considered telling him about the incident at O'Hare, asking for his advice on how to handle it. But she held back. This wasn't a company matter, and she didn't want to use her position for personal issues. "Flight was fine," she said instead. "On time, smooth landing." They spent 15 minutes discussing quarterly goals and upcoming board presentations. As their meeting wrapped up, Thomas walked her to the door. "By the way," he said, "the security team at O'Hare mentioned they're having some issues with the new screening protocols we suggested. Might be worth looking into while you're working on the customer experience improvements." Maya froze. "What kind of issues?" Thomas shrugged. "Not sure of the details. Just got a note from their director saying they're getting pushback from some agents. You know how it is with change." Maya nodded slowly. She did indeed know how it was with change. Especially, changes aimed at making the screening process more equitable, less prone to bias, changes she had championed based on passenger feedback data. Data that showed certain groups consistently reported negative experiences at security checkpoints. "I'll look into it," she promised. Back in her office, Maya sat at her desk, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. Was it possible her confrontation with Officer Dawson wasn't just random bias, but targeted? Did he know who she was? What her role at the airline entailed? The thought made her skin crawl. She picked up her phone and texted Linda back. "Made my flight fine. Thank you again for your support. Definitely filing that complaint." The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. By 6 o'clock, Maya's head was pounding, and she was grateful when David knocked on her door to remind her about dinner with the marketing team. "Want me to reschedule?" he asked, noticing her rubbing her temples. "You look tired." Maya shook her head. "No, I'm fine. Just need some fresh air. Tell them I'll meet them at the restaurant at 7. After David left, Maya leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes briefly. The day had been productive, but exhausting, her mind constantly toggling between work tasks and replaying the morning's confrontation. She needed to file that complaint while the details were still fresh, but it would have to wait until after dinner. Maya freshened up in her office bathroom, reapplied her lipstick, and headed out into the New York evening. The restaurant was only a few blocks away, and the walk would do her good. As she navigated the busy sidewalks, Maya felt her phone buzzing in her purse. Probably David with a last-minute change to the dinner plan. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It wasn't David. It was an email notification from O'Hare Airport Security. Maya stopped walking, people flowing around her on the crowded sidewalk. She opened the email with a sense of dread. "Dear Ms. Wilson, we are contacting you regarding an incident reported by one of our officers this morning. Officer Richard Dawson has filed a report indicating you became confrontational during a routine security check and made threatening remarks about his job. As a courtesy, we wanted to inform you that this incident has been documented. Should you wish to provide your account of events, please contact the number below. Regards, O'Hare Security Administration." Maya stared at the phone in disbelief. Dawson had filed a report against her, claiming she was confrontational, threatening. It was a complete inversion of what had actually happened. And they had contacted her so quickly the same day, when most security complaints took weeks to process, if they were processed at all. Her hands shaking slightly, Maya stepped to the side of the sidewalk, leaning against a building as she reread the email. This changed everything. Dawson wasn't just randomly profiling her. He was actively working to discredit her. Which meant he did know who she was, what her role at the airline was. He was trying to get ahead of any complaint she might file by making her look like the aggressor. Maya looked up at the New York sky, now darkening as evening set in. She had a choice to make. She could let this go, focus on her work, avoid the conflict. That would be the easier path. Or she could fight back, use the position she had worked so hard to earn to make a real difference. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from one of the marketing team members. "We're at the restaurant, got a table by the window, see you soon." Maya took a deep breath. Dinner first. Then she would decide her next steps. She put her phone away and continued walking toward the restaurant, her mind racing with possibilities. The marketing team was waiting when she arrived, a group of bright, enthusiastic professionals eager to share their ideas for the upcoming campaign. Maya forced herself to focus, to be present with them, to give them the attention they deserved. But beneath her engaged exterior, she was forming a plan. Halfway through dinner, Maya excused herself to use the restroom. In the quiet privacy of the stall, she pulled out her phone again and composed a brief email to her assistant. "David, I need you to pull something from my files first thing tomorrow. Look in the blue folder marked Security Protocols. There's a document about my airline ID and security clearance. I need you to make 5 copies and have them ready for my 9 a.m. meeting." She sent the email, then took a moment to gather herself. The decision was made. She wasn't going to let Dawson's false report stand. She wasn't going to file a simple complaint that could be easily dismissed or buried. She was going to use every tool at her disposal to address not just this incident, but the larger issue it represented. When Maya returned to the table, she felt a new sense of clarity and purpose. She laughed at a joke one of the team members made, offered thoughtful feedback on their presentation ideas, and even suggested they order dessert. To anyone watching, she was simply a successful executive enjoying dinner with her team. But inside, Maya was preparing for battle. After dinner, Maya took a taxi back to her hotel, her mind too preoccupied for a walk. In her room, she kicked off her shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, thinking through her strategy for tomorrow. It wasn't just about Officer Dawson anymore. It was about a system that allowed people like him to abuse their power, to target travelers based on race, to file false reports without consequence. Maya opened her laptop and began typing. Not a complaint this time, but a plan. A comprehensive plan to address security screening procedures, bias training, accountability measures. The kind of plan only someone with her position and knowledge could create. The kind of plan that could actually make a difference. As she worked late into the night, Maya thought about all the travelers who had faced similar treatment but lacked her resources and platform. She thought about the young black man she had seen Dawson targeting after her own encounter. She thought about how easy it would be to just let this go, to focus on her successful career, to avoid rocking the boat. But that wasn't who Maya Wilson was. She had never taken the easy path. She had never backed down from a challenge. And she wasn't about to start now. Not when she finally had the position and power to create real change. By the time Maya finally closed her laptop and prepared for bed, it was past midnight. Tomorrow would be a busy day. Her regular meetings, her return flight to Chicago, and now this new mission. But as she drifted off to sleep, Maya felt something she hadn't felt since before the confrontation at O'Hare. Hope. Hope that something good might come from this ugly experience. Hope that she could help create a travel environment where everyone was treated with dignity and respect, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from. And hope that Officer Dawson was ready for what was coming his way. Because Maya Wilson certainly was. Maya woke early the next morning, her mind already racing with plans for the day ahead. She checked her phone to find an email from David confirming he'd located the documents she requested. Good. She would need those for what she had in mind. After a quick shower and breakfast in her hotel room, Maya dressed with particular care. Her navy blue suit was crisp and professional, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Today was not a day for half measures. As she gathered her things, Maya's phone rang. It was Thomas, the CEO. "Maya, glad I caught you. There's been a development with that O'Hare situation I mentioned yesterday," he said, his voice concerned. "Their security director called me directly this morning. Apparently one of their officers filed a report about you. Something about an altercation at the checkpoint." Maya took a deep breath. So Dawson's report had already made its way up the chain. "It wasn't an altercation, Thomas. I was profiled and harassed by an officer who then filed a false report to cover himself. I was planning to discuss it with you today." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "This is serious, Maya. The TSA has a lot of power at airports. We need to tread carefully here." "I understand that," Maya replied, her voice steady. "But this isn't just about me. It's about a pattern of behavior that affects our customers, our employees, our entire business model. People won't fly if they don't feel safe and respected." Another pause. "You're right, of course. What do you need from me?" "Just your support," Maya said. "I'm handling this." After hanging up, Maya headed to the office, walking the few blocks from her hotel in the crisp morning air. She arrived to find David waiting with the documents she'd requested. "5 copies as requested," he said, handing her a folder. "Also, your 9 a.m. meeting had to be pushed to 9:30. The Chicago team is calling in and they had some technical issues." Maya nodded. "That's fine. Actually, it gives me time for something else. Can you set up a call with the head of security at O'Hare? The sooner the better." David looked surprised but didn't question her. "I'll get right on it." While David made the call, Maya reviewed the documents he'd provided. Her airline ID and security clearance paperwork were all in order, just as she remembered. As a senior executive of Skyway Airlines, Maya had top-level clearance at all airports where they operated. It wasn't something she advertised or used often, preferring to experience airports as regular travelers did, but today it would serve a purpose. David appeared in her doorway. "I have Director Patterson from O'Hare Security on the line. He sounds concerned." Maya smiled. "Perfect. Put him through." She picked up the phone, her voice professionally pleasant. "Director Patterson, thank you for taking my call. This is Maya Wilson, Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at Skyway Airlines." "Ms. Wilson," Patterson replied, his tone cautious. "I understand there was an incident yesterday with one of our officers." "Yes, there was," Maya confirmed. "Though the report you received isn't accurate. I'd like to discuss this in person if possible. I'll be flying back to Chicago this evening." "In person?" Patterson sounded surprised. "I'm not sure that's necessary. We have procedures for passenger complaints." "I'm not just a passenger, Director Patterson," Maya interrupted smoothly. "I'm an executive of the airline that operates 30% of the flights from your airport. And what happened yesterday wasn't just a personal inconvenience. It represents a systemic issue that affects our business relationship." The silence on the other end of the line told Maya her message had landed. Finally, Patterson spoke again. "I see. When does your flight arrive?" 7:30 p.m. I can be at your office by 8:15. "That's after normal business hours," Patterson objected. "I'm sure you can make an exception," Maya replied. "This matter is quite urgent." After another pause, Patterson agreed to the meeting. Maya thanked him and hung up, feeling a small surge of satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. The rest of the morning passed in a whirlwind of meetings and conference calls. Maya was fully engaged, her mind sharp, her contributions valuable. To her team, she appeared no different than usual, focused, insightful, committed to excellence. They had no idea of the parallel track her mind was running on, planning each step of the confrontation to come. At lunch, Maya excused herself from the team and went back to her office, closing the door. She opened her laptop and drafted an email to Skyway's legal department, outlining the incident with Officer Dawson and requesting guidance on next steps. She didn't send it yet. That would depend on how the evening's meeting went, but she wanted it ready. Her phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Any update on that complaint? Thinking about you." Maya smiled and typed back. "Working on something better than a complaint. We'll let you know how it goes." The afternoon meetings flew by, and before Maya knew it, it was time to head to the airport for her flight back to Chicago. David had arranged a car service, and as they rode to JFK, he updated her on the next day's schedule. "I've moved your morning meetings to give you some recovery time after your late night with the security director," he said. "First call isn't until 10 a.m. Maya nodded gratefully. "Thank you, David. You always think of everything." "It's my job," he replied with a smile. "Also, your brother called, said to remind you about dinner on Sunday." The mention of her brother brought a genuine smile to Maya's face. Family had always been her anchor, the constant support through every challenge in her career. Sunday dinner was sacred, a time to reconnect and remember what really mattered. At JFK, Maya moved through security without incident, her airline ID clipped visibly to her jacket this time. The contrast with yesterday's experience at O'Hare was stark. Here, the TSA agents were professional and efficient, treating all travelers with the same level of scrutiny, which is to say not much. The line moved quickly. No one was singled out. No one was humiliated. This was how it should be everywhere, Maya thought as she headed to her gate. Consistent, respectful, efficient. It wasn't complicated. It just required the right training, the right oversight, the right accountability. Her flight back to Chicago was on time, a smooth journey that gave Maya a chance to refine her strategy for the meeting with Director Patterson. She wasn't going in with accusations or demands. She was going in with data, with solutions, with a clear-eyed view of both the problem and the path forward. When the plane landed at O'Hare, Maya felt a flutter of anxiety. This was where it had all started, less than 36 hours ago. Somewhere in this airport, Officer Dawson was on duty, perhaps subjecting other travelers to the same treatment she had experienced. Maya deplaned and walked through the terminal with purpose, her carry-on rolling behind her. She didn't head toward the exit, but instead toward the administrative offices located in a separate section of the airport. As she walked, she passed the security checkpoint where yesterday's incident had occurred. It was quieter now, the evening rush having subsided, but seeing it brought back the feelings of anger and humiliation. Maya pushed those feelings aside. Tonight wasn't about emotion. It was about action. When she reached the administrative offices, a security guard stopped her. "Ma'am, these areas are restricted. Do you have an appointment?" Maya nodded. "Yes, with Director Patterson at 8:15. I'm Maya Wilson from Skyway Airlines." The guard checked a list, then nodded. "ID, please." Maya reached into her bag, but instead of producing her driver's license, she pulled out her airline executive ID and security clearance card. The guard's eyes widened slightly as he examined it. "I'll escort you to Director Patterson's office, Ms. Wilson," he said, his tone now respectful. They walked down a long hallway lined with offices, most dark at this hour. At the end of the hall, a light spilled from an open door. Director Patterson, a tall man with graying hair and a serious expression, stood when Maya entered. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "Though I must say this is highly unusual." Maya shook his hand firmly. "So was my experience yesterday, Director. Shall we sit?" Patterson gestured to a chair across from his desk, then took his own seat. "I've reviewed Officer Dawson's report," he began. "He indicates there was a security concern that required additional screening and that you became confrontational when asked to comply." Maya nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "That's one version of events. Before I share mine, I'd like to ask if you've reviewed the security footage from yesterday morning." Patterson looked surprised. "Footage? No, I haven't had a chance. I'd like to see it," Maya interrupted. "Now, if possible. Ms. Wilson, reviewing security footage is not standard procedure for passenger complaints," Patterson said, his voice taking on an edge of authority. "There are protocols." "I'm not filing a passenger complaint," Maya cut in, her voice calm, but firm. I'm here as a senior executive of an airline that brings millions of dollars in business to this airport every year, and I'm asking to see footage of an incident involving one of your officers and myself. An incident that has serious implications for our ongoing partnership. The implied threat hung in the air between them. Finally, Patterson sighed. Very well. We can access the footage from my computer. He turned to his keyboard, typing in commands, navigating through a security system. After a few minutes, he pulled up the footage from the previous day, focusing on the checkpoint where Maya had been processed. Together, they watched the scene unfold on the monitor. The crisp, clear footage showed Maya presenting her ID and boarding. Passed to Officer Dawson. It showed his unusually long examination of her documents, his questioning, the way he marked her boarding pass differently than others. The footage continued, showing Maya's random selection for additional screening, the thorough pat-down, the extended inspection of her carry-on. The camera angle captured the faces of other travelers watching, some uncomfortable, some curious. It showed Maya maintaining her composure throughout, speaking calmly, complying with all instructions. Then came the second encounter in the terminal. Dawson approaching her, demanding her boarding pass again, creating a scene. The footage clearly showed Maya's restraint, Dawson's aggression, the gathering crowd. It showed Linda stepping in to support Maya, Dawson's reluctant retreat. When the video ended, the office was silent. Maya looked at Patterson, waiting. He cleared his throat. This doesn't match Officer Dawson's report. No, Maya agreed. It doesn't. Patterson rubbed his face, suddenly looking tired. Ms. Wilson, I want to apologize for your experience. This is not how we train our officers to behave. I assure you, there will be consequences for Officer Dawson. Maya nodded but didn't smile. I appreciate that, Director, but this isn't just about one officer or one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior that affects countless travelers every day. Travelers who don't have the platform I have, who can't get a meeting with you at 8:15 p.m. to review footage. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, placing it on his desk. This is a proposal for a joint initiative between Skyway Airlines and O'Hare Security. A comprehensive approach to addressing bias in screening procedures, improving training, implementing accountability measures, and tracking passenger experiences. Patterson looked at the folder, then back at Maya, clearly surprised by the turn the conversation had taken. You came prepared. I always do, Maya replied. Director Patterson, we have an opportunity here. We can treat this as an isolated incident, discipline one officer and move on. Or we can recognize it as a symptom of a larger problem and work together to solve it. Skyway is prepared to invest resources, expertise, and influence in this initiative. The question is, are you? Patterson opened the folder, scanning the document inside. After a moment, he looked up at Maya with newfound respect. You're serious about this? Completely, Maya confirmed. But there's one more thing I need to happen first. What's that? Patterson asked. I want to meet with Officer Dawson. Tonight? Patterson's eyebrows shot up. That's not possible. He's on duty, and frankly, given the circumstances, I don't think it's appropriate. I don't want an apology, Maya clarified. I want him to understand who you, who I am and what I'm proposing. I want him to be part of this solution, not just subject to punishment. Patterson studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. That's an unusual approach. Sometimes unusual approaches are exactly what's needed, Maya said. Patterson picked up his phone and dialed an extension. This is Director Patterson. Is Officer Dawson still on shift? Good. Have him report to my office immediately. He hung up and looked at Maya. He'll be here in a few minutes. Maya took a deep breath, preparing herself for the confrontation to come. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the opportunity to turn a painful experience into meaningful change. When a knock came at the door, Patterson called, "Enter." Officer Dawson stepped into the office, his expression confident until he saw Maya sitting across from Patterson. His face drained of color, just as it had in the terminal when Linda had stepped in. Director? You wanted to see me? Officer K. Dawson, Patterson said, his voice stern. I believe you recognize Ms. Wilson. Dawson swallowed visibly. Yes, sir. Ms. Wilson is not just a traveler, Officer Dawson. She is the Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at Skyway Airlines. She holds top-level security clearance at this airport and every other airport where Skyway operates. Patterson pushed a button on his computer, and the security footage began playing on the monitor. She is also the subject of a report you filed yesterday. A report that, as I'm now seeing, does not match the reality captured by our security cameras. Dawson's eyes darted between the monitor, Patterson, and Maya, panic creeping into his expression. Sir, I can explain. I'm sure you can, Patterson interrupted. But right now I want you to listen. Ms. Wilson has brought a proposal to my attention, a joint initiative between Skyway and O'Hare Security to address bias in screening procedures. Despite your treatment of her, she is advocating for a solution that focuses on improvement rather than punishment. Dawson's expression shifted from panic to confusion. He looked at Maya, clearly unsure how to respond. Maya met his gaze steadily. Officer Dawson, what happened yesterday wasn't just about me. It's about a system that allows bias to influence how travelers are treated. A system that needs to change. She stood and pulled her airline badge from her pocket, holding it up for him to see clearly. I could use this to make sure you never work in airport security again, but that wouldn't solve the larger problem. Instead, I'm proposing something different. I want you to be part of a pilot program for this initiative, to help us understand where the training fails, where the biases creep in, how we can do better. The office fell silent as Dawson stared at Maya's badge, then at her face. The realization of who she was, of the power she held, was clearly sinking in. But so was something else, the unexpected offer of redemption rather than punishment. Why? He finally asked. Why would you want me involved after what happened? Because change doesn't happen through punishment alone, Maya replied. It happens through understanding, through recognizing mistakes and working to correct them. The question is, are you willing to be part of that process? As Dawson considered her question, Maya could see the conflict in his eyes, the defensive posture beginning to crumble, the recognition that he stood at a crossroads, not just for his career but for his understanding of his role, his impact, his responsibility. The choice he would make, and the changes that would follow, remained to be seen. But as Maya stood there, airline badge in hand, she knew that whatever happened next would ripple far beyond this office, far beyond this airport. It would touch the lives of countless travelers who deserved to move through the world with dignity and respect, regardless of how they looked or where they came from. And that, more than any personal vindication, was what Maya had been fighting for all along. 6 months had passed since that night in Director Patterson's office. 6 months of meetings, planning sessions, training development, and careful implementation. 6 months of turning an ugly incident into something that might actually make a difference. Maya stood at the back of a large conference room at O'Hare Airport, watching as 30 TSA agents listened attentively to a presentation on the new security protocols. The presenter was showing data from the pilot program: decreased complaint rates, improved passenger satisfaction scores, more efficient processing times, all while maintaining the same high security standards. What made Maya smile, though, was the identity of the presenter, Officer Richard Dawson. That night in Patterson's office, Dawson had made a choice that surprised everyone, perhaps even himself. After a long moment of consideration, he had nodded and said, "I want to be part of the solution." It wasn't an apology, that would come later, but it was a beginning. The journey hadn't been easy. The first few weeks of working with Dawson had been tense, uncomfortable, filled with defensive posturing and reluctant participation. But Maya had persisted, bringing in experts in bias training, gathering data on passenger experiences, creating a framework for meaningful change. And slowly something shifted. Maybe it was the day Dawson watched video compilations of similar incidents happening to other travelers of color. Maybe it was the meeting where former TSA agents spoke candidly about the pressures and biases they'd experienced on the job. Or maybe it was simply the cumulative effect of seeing the problem from a different angle, through a different lens. Whatever the catalyst, Dawson had gradually transformed from a reluctant participant to an active advocate. He began sharing his own observations of problematic patterns, suggesting improvements to training protocols, even volunteering to lead discussion groups with other officers. His perspective as someone who had been part of the problem became invaluable in crafting the solution. Now, watching him present the program's results to his colleagues, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride in what they'd accomplished, hope for what might still be achieved, and a lingering sadness that it had taken such a painful incident to spark this change. From her position at the back of the room, Maya could see the faces of the TSA agents as they listened to Dawson. Some were nodding, engaged, interested. Others looked skeptical, arms crossed, expressions guarded. Change never came easily, especially when it required acknowledging uncomfortable truths about oneself and one's organization. The data speaks for itself, Dawson was saying, gesturing to a graph on the screen behind him. When we removed subjective criteria from our selection process and implemented standardized procedures, complaints dropped by 47%, and our security effectiveness metrics remained stable. A hand went up in the audience. But what about our discretion, our intuition? That's a key part of our job. It was a fair question, one that had come up repeatedly during the development of the new protocols. Maya watched as Dawson handled it with unexpected grace. "Great question," he said. "We're not eliminating discretion or intuition. We're making sure they're based on relevant security factors, not unconscious biases. The new guidelines actually help clarify what those relevant factors are." Maya smiled to herself. 6 months ago, Dawson would have bristled at the mere suggestion that bias might influence his decisions. Now he was teaching others how to recognize and mitigate it. As the presentation continued, Maya felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She slipped out of the room to take the call. "Maya Wilson," she answered quietly, walking down the hall away from the conference room. "Ms. Wilson, it's Linda Thompson. We met at O'Hare about 6 months ago, during that incident with the TSA officer." Maya smiled, surprised and pleased to hear from Linda again. They had exchanged a few messages in the weeks following the incident but hadn't spoken recently. "Linda, of course, how are you?" "I'm well, thank you. Actually, I'm at O'Hare right now. Just passed through security and something remarkable happened. The agent who checked my ID asked for feedback on my experience. Said it was part of a new program to improve passenger satisfaction and ensure equitable treatment." Maya leaned against the wall, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. "Did they now?" "Yes, and it got me thinking about you about that day. I wondered if you had anything to do with this new program." Maya glanced back toward the conference room, where Dawson was now taking questions from his colleagues. "I may have had a small part in it." Linda laughed softly. "Somehow I doubt it was small. Listen, I'm about to board, but I wanted to say thank you. For whatever you did, however you did it, it matters." "It does," Maya agreed. "Have a safe flight, Linda." After hanging up, Maya stood in the hallway for a moment, reflecting on how far they'd come in 6 months. The pilot program at O'Hare had exceeded expectations, drawing attention from other airports and security agencies. Just last week, Maya had briefed the head of the TSA on their findings, with Director Patterson and, surprisingly, Officer Dawson by her side. Of course, not everything had changed. Maya still sometimes felt eyes lingering on her a beat too long, in certain spaces. Still occasionally noticed security guards watching her with unwarranted suspicion in high-end stores. Still heard the surprise in people's voices when they learned her title, her position, her accomplishments. But something had shifted, both within her and within the specific environment of O'Hare security. A small victory, perhaps, in the larger context of a world still grappling with bias and inequality, but a victory, nonetheless. Maya's phone buzzed again, this time with a text from her assistant. "Board meeting tomorrow moved to 10 a.m. Also, CEO wants to discuss expanding the security program to other airports." She smiled. Expansion had always been the goal, to take what they'd learned at O'Hare and apply it more broadly, to create a template that could be adapted and implemented across the country, perhaps even internationally, to make the experience of travel more equitable, more dignified, for everyone. As Maya typed a quick reply to her assistant, the door to the conference room opened and people began filing out. The presentation had ended. Some of the agents were talking animatedly, continuing the discussion. Others looked thoughtful, contemplative. A few appeared unchanged, unmoved. That was to be expected. Change happened person by person, moment by moment, rarely all at once. Dawson was one of the last to emerge, surrounded by colleagues asking questions. He spotted Maya across the hall and excused himself, walking over to where she stood. "What did you think?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice despite the confident presentation he'd just delivered. "You did well," Maya replied honestly. They were engaged, even the skeptics were listening. Dawson nodded, relieved. "It's still hard sometimes, getting them to see what I couldn't see 6 months ago." "It's hard for all of us," Maya acknowledged. "Recognizing our own biases, changing patterns that feel natural, questioning assumptions we've never examined. But it's necessary work." They walked together down the hallway, toward the administrative offices where they had a meeting scheduled with Director Patterson to discuss the next phase of the program. As they passed through the terminal, Maya noticed the security checkpoint, the same one where their paths had first crossed 6 months ago. It looked different now, with new signage explaining the screening process, feedback stations where passengers could rate their experience, and officers who seemed more engaged with travelers, more present in their interactions. "I never thought I'd say this," Dawson said, following her gaze. "But I'm grateful for what happened that day. Not proud of it, but grateful for where it led." Maya considered this. It's a complex thing, isn't it? To find value in painful experiences. To create something positive from something negative. "Yes," Dawson agreed. "And to realize how much you didn't know, didn't see, didn't understand, until someone forced you to look." They continued walking in companionable silence, an unlikely alliance born of confrontation and transformed through mutual commitment to change. Maya thought about all the travelers moving through this airport today, tomorrow, next year. People, from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all identities, each deserving to be treated with the same respect, the same dignity, the same presumption of innocence and belonging. They were still far from that ideal. The data showed improvement, but also highlighted how much work remained to be done. Bias didn't disappear overnight or even in 6 months. Systems didn't transform completely in the span of a pilot program, no matter how successful. But they had made a start, created a model, proven that change was possible. As they approached Patterson's office, Maya's phone buzzed once more. This time it was a news alert. Transportation Secretary to announce new guidelines for airport. Security procedures citing O'Hare pilot program as model. Maya showed the alert to Dawson, whose eyes widened in surprise. "Already? We're not even finished with the pilot." "The results are compelling enough," Maya replied, "and the timing is right. People are ready for this change." Dawson nodded slowly, taking in the implications. "So what happens next?" Maya smiled. "Next, we take what we've learned here and scale it. We refine it, improve it, adapt it for different contexts. We build on this foundation until equitable treatment isn't a special program or initiative, it's just the way things are done." "That sounds like a lot of work," Dawson observed. "It is," Maya agreed, "but it's worth doing." They entered Patterson's office, where the director was waiting with several members of his team. The meeting would focus on next steps, expansion plans, resource allocations, the nuts and bolts of institutional change. As Maya took her seat at the table, she thought about that morning 6 months ago, standing in the security line, feeling the familiar knot of tension in her stomach. She couldn't have imagined then where that difficult experience would lead. To a partnership with the very officer who had profiled her, to a program that was changing procedures and mindsets, to a model that might influence security protocols across the country. It was a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful changes came from the most uncomfortable moments. That speaking up, standing firm, and seeking solutions rather than simply assigning blame could transform a single incident into a catalyst for systemic improvement. The meeting began, and Maya focused on the discussion at hand. There was still so much to do, so many challenges to navigate, so many hearts and minds to reach. But as she looked around the table at the diverse group of people now working together toward a common goal, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel when this journey began: genuine hope. Not just for travelers like herself, who had the platform and position to demand better treatment, but for every person who moved through these spaces, deserving to be seen as an individual rather than a stereotype, to be treated with respect rather than suspicion, to travel through the world with dignity intact. That had been the goal all along. Not punishment or vindication, but transformation. Not just for one airport or one security team, but for an entire approach to public safety and security. An approach that recognized how bias undermined both, how unfair treatment of some made the system less effective for all. As the meeting progressed, ideas flowing, plans taking shape, Maya caught Dawson's eye across the table. He nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement and shared purpose. From adversaries to allies, from conflict to collaboration, an unexpected journey that had brought them here to this moment of creating something meaningful from something painful. And that, Maya thought, was perhaps the most important transformation of all.